All right, so one of the first morning, and second of all, I know that there's a number of new faces here. So what I would like to just share is how we try to go through these discussions. Instead of me preparing a subject, we take questions from the audience, as they say. But the truth is, like, I like that any opportunity of or I should say, any type of question is appropriate. If I don't know the answer, I will share that with you, and if I know the answer, I will try my best to share it. Feel, of course I do. But feel free to challenge my answers too. One of the things that I always try to do is that my answers have to be from Jewish sources, not fluffy, as they say. Although sometimes fluffy answers are really nice answers. So yesterday, for example, we had a discussion about what makes something that, like, what is the origin of the Jewish star? That was in this discussion. And so after the class, someone shared with me an email, and I forgot who they quoted. I think it was Dan Brown from the Da Vinci Code, I think, that says that there is, and again, he's quoting something else, that there is some sort of tradition that a triangle that faces down and a triangle that faces up are genders. And so potentially putting them together, making the Jewish star, is like saying that the Jewish star represents men and women, and King David, if it's the Magen David, David's shield. So the association would be that it's connected somehow to the genders, that he was fighting for men and women. But that would be a fluffy answer, meaning it might be an answer that talks to people. It's not rooted in a Jewish source. And so it didn't come up in the class yesterday. I had never heard of that anyway, so it was nice to hear that. It's always good to add to your knowledge. But the truth is, for the Jewish star, there is no Jewish answer. I just want to put that out there. Yeah, there are Jewish ideas, but none of them say this is where the star comes from and that's why. They all say we don't know, but maybe this is what it represents. So again, that's just an idea here that I'm saying I try to use a Jewish source for it. If there are other ideas, they're always nice to learn, but that's kind of my methodology of thought. On that note, maybe we'll go around the room because of the new representation here, and then we'll start off again. Like any question that you have, we'll try to go through. And if it's not today that we have the time, I'll send an email with an answer. How about that? But we'll start with Chaim. How about you? Could just share your name and where you were born. How about that?
I'm Sendel, was born in Poland. We are part of Rabbi Mendy's synagogue. We live in Desert Ridge. We've been there for 25 years since Rabbi
Nice.
Mendy came to Desert Ridge.
All right. And again, you don't have to share anything more than your name and where you're originally from. So Poland, Chaim. I love that.
It's a small town in the south of Poland, near the Czechoslovakian border.
It was Russia. Now it's, you know how it works. No, I say that because that's the country that when you say it, it's like it went through enough changes.
Came to Israel after the war.
Nice.
After the war.
But you ended up in Israel, where it's nice. All right, Mindy.
I'm Mindy Gabriel, I'm his wife. I met him,
Wait, where were you born? First.
Jersey.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Next. When we do the meet and greets, we're gonna ask for more information.
I'm Fanny Cipi. I was born in Romania and I live here in Paradise Valley.
Born in Romania. We got an international group today. Tell me you're gonna tell me you're from Iran, and then we're gonna.
Do you sing the song Romania?
What?
You sing the song Romania?
You know the song? Romania, Romania.
Romania.
I think they were talking about the butcher shop in Chicago. Is that what it? Romani or Romanian? Romanian. Are you familiar with that butcher shop? Like if you grew up in Chicago, that's like good place to buy your meat. I even know about it, and I'm not from Chicago.
Just north of Lawrence, next to the Albert Bowling.
All right, Madeline.
I'm Madeline from, I was born in Brooklyn.
Where's that?
Really?
Look on the map.
You're ruining our streak.
I'm Ayala Weinberg and Ayala Monk is my maiden name. I was born in New York, but raised in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sandra Bondi and I'm from the Bronx, New York.
Oh, we did sit together, then.
Yeah, so clearly.
I'm Judy Zuckman and from Chicago.
I'm Marilyn Stasel, born in Brooklyn. Joan Levin Sachs, I was born in Philadelphia, PA.
PA.
I'm Stan Stoller. I was born in Maryland.
Nice.
I'm Donna Stoller, Dan's wife, and I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm Janie Kuznitsky. I was born in a hospital in New York, but lived in New Jersey.
Ethel Schmoss Bewick and was born in Chicago.
First, beware, born in Chicago.
And there are two people actually on Zoom. Rick is Karen, Rick's Pennsylvania.
I was
You're
born
muted.
outside of
Share it anyway.
Chicago.
And Karen on here is Chicago. And I was born in Arizona. So that rounds out the circle.
Where?
From where? No. I'm very proud to say I'm from Arizona. One of the few that proud. Phoenix. Yes. Why is that? No, I was born in Good Sam, actually, which is now Banner University. When it was still the windows, the airplane windows is what I call it. Did that building come down or it's still up? Still up?
The big white one?
Yeah, the original tower. Yeah, so thank God it's still structure. I am the middle child. There are 7 of us. I'm the middle. They do say, just on that note, they say the middle child is the second child. So what is the middle child when you talk about it? Someone who's starving for attention because he didn't get it, right? So in a large family, they say it's the second child because the firstborn got a lot of attention. The second one came along after the firstborn got a lot, and then another child came along. So it's like they can't get attention anywhere. But I don't, I'll take whatever.
Children are more independent.
Are they?
No, not necessarily. No.
We have you're going to be our educated answer on that as coming from the we have the psychoanalysis here. No? Is it true? Psychotherapist, you have to know.
Is it true that they're more independent? Not necessarily.
Okay, thank you. But that's subjective. Anyways, but that's a good, entry into, we're not doing subjective. How about that? We're going to try to get objective answers. Okay, any questions wow, that was fast. You had your hand up first. She hit the buzzer first. All right.
25. My questions.
Oh, plural questions? You said questions?
Whatever, yeah.
No, I don't mind. Should I write them down or you'll remind me?
Of Israel, my concerns. I'd like to know why Israel is not letting any NGOs, Doctors Without Borders, into Gaza. And also, why, since the ceasefire was signed 2 months ago, has Israel continued the destruction and of 2,500 buildings? But also, my other concern is Israel is looking so negative, and it's so hard for me to handle it.
Okay, so before we go into answers, I just want a disclaimer here. I don't speak for Israel, but to answer your questions and to not make it take over an entire discussion, the short answer is that your first question was, why is Israel not letting Doctors Without Borders? So I like facts, but when you read stuff on the internet, is it fact or not is always a good question. But the fact is that there have already been more than 2 doctors from Doctors Without Borders that have supported Hamas in the sense of terrorism. So that's number one. So basically here's the one thing, whenever Israel's saying this NGO can't help or that, NGOs are known to have a side. There's a really good book if you want to read it. It's called To Catch the Jew, and it really, To Catch the Jew. It is either you like it or you hate it, but it's a good book regardless. And I've heard that people who read it from either side of like the political spectrum think it says their take, which is pretty fascinating for a book. It's written by a journalist who was from Germany, but he is Jewish, and went into Gaza or Ramallah. I don't remember which part of that. And really, no one knew he was Jewish, so he was able to kind of speak, and people were speaking more freely with him because of that. And then he writes a book about it. No, it's got to be over. It's got to be over like 10 years, at least around 10 years. I'm trying to remember the author's name, but To Catch the Jew or To Catch a Jew, I liked it. It gave a very good perspective on all the NGOs and their problems, like that they truly, you cannot help Israel if you already don't like Israel. And that's kind of how I look at it. And you can't help Gaza if you already don't like Gaza. It works both ways. You have to really be objective, see people as people. Yeah, that's the one. What is it, the Jew or a Jew?
Catch the Jew.
Catch the Jew. Tuvia Tenenbaum. Yeah. Catch the Jew. Anyways, I liked it. If you don't like it, I would love to hear if any of you read it, I do appreciate. But again, it's an older book. It's like probably 2015 or something. So that's the first answer. The second answer is that Gaza, I don't know if you know, but 2 days ago they shot a rocket or attempted to shoot a rocket. This is like after the ceasefire on the side that's supposed to, be working on cleaning up the problems, not in the yellow zone as they call it. So
It's not the first time.
right. So that's why I say, like, for me, there's still a big problem that there are people who are trying to kill us. And if you're under that, you have to take extreme measures for protection. And again, of course, there are opinions on that. Well, what is extreme? I'm not, so that's why I said I don't want to.
October 7th was started by not Hamas.
Hamas. You haven't read that?
No, it's all about how terrible Israel is that I'm reading.
Well, that's because you're reading. This is what I've learned. Look at American politics before you touch US politics. There is an entire, no, hold on. We're not going to make it go into all that. There is one thing for sure. If you watch kind of only certain channels, you get one perspective. If you watch other channels, you get another perspective. And as long as we know that, then you have to find the truth somewhere. That's kind of how I look at that, to not get into the details.
People
So if you're,
CNN,
well, I don't want it to become a emotionally charged conversation.
The main issue is that Hamas must be destroyed,
Right,
period.
of course.
So anything that compromises that policy, Israel can't accept. I can't accept it.
Mhm.
One of the problems with Gaza, the press always loves the underdog. Gaza is the underdog.
By the way, that happens in America too.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere.
So I don't feel sorry for Gaza
Either,
as far as I'm concerned. They could wipe the whole place out.
of course.
But yes, you did mention one thing. They're losing the PR war on some places.
Yes.
That is true. Right? And there isn't really an easy fix to that. Because the fact is there are way more people in the world that are Muslim. If we just started there. So the PR war is a difficult uphill battle. And then when you have algorithms of large social media platforms that actually favor one side over another, you're going to automatically have that platform compromised in messaging. And that's what's happening, right? Just to use an American example, if you remember this, there was a trend 2 or 3 years ago, before the Gaza war, where people found Osama bin Laden's letter and started posting it on social media and say, he makes a point. These were Americans who were like, because somebody started a trend on TikTok and like, oh yeah, and it's like, how could you say that? So I say that young people are influenced very easily. And hopefully over time they get educated. Or they don't want to know the history. All right, we're going to let everyone share and then we'll change the subject.
I started, as he was saying, Gaza is now seen as the underdog. And I think it's just important to fight the perception of Gaza being the underdog as it is to destroy Hamas. Because I think that there's that certainly the enormous rise in anti-Semitism is fueled by what Israel is doing. I was very happy to see, and I think we have to focus on that, or, we're gonna lose the world. I was happy to, there's an ad on now, although I asked my daughter, and she said it's not in Maryland. There's an ad here I see all of the time. And it's a picture, I don't know how many of you have seen it, it's a picture of a close-up of a woman's face. And what it says is, they killed her brother, they shot her dog, they took her hostage for 400 days, they raped her, they starved her, they put a gun to her head, and then you go into what looks like it through her eye, and what she's seeing is a Palestinian who attacked on October 7th. And if you support Hamas, this is what you're supporting. We need more of that.
Right.
The world needs things.
I want to say
It's a
something.
reason that Israel is doing this.
Right. All right, Fanny, go for it.
The Muslim are all over the world, okay? We know it. The question is, what's gonna happen in 20 more years or 25 years more? But the law of the Muslim, they marry 4 and 5 women, so they create children more and more and more. This is how they go over.
You're saying how they're populating the world.
Yeah. That's it.
And you want to add something to this, or you had a question?
No.
Okay, so your question next. So Chaim wants that. Chaim gets the final thought.
I have a question.
Oh, question. Okay, so all right, point. So just to conclude that, the Jewish law on this, how about that? Is that if someone wants to kill you, you kill them first. That's a Jewish law. It's not called murder. There is something called the rodef, if you've ever heard the Jewish law on that. The din of the rodef. And that applies in many, many different instances. Of course, the standard explanation of that is someone comes to my house to kill me. I don't have to, I'm listening to like all the legal jargon over the last week, if you're thinking about it. And the question is, does a person have an obligation to back down? Right? To not go into the ICE shooting, but to talk about the legal words that they're using is, did that officer have a legal obligation to move away, or can he stand his ground, which is what we talk about when we talk about home defense, the castle doctrine. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but that word of like, do I have to retreat? Jewish law says not only should you not retreat, you should attack first. Your defense, the defense of your people, of your family, of the Israeli community, which is your brothers and sisters, they have an obligation to defend themselves. So a preemptive strike is allowed and required in situations. So not to go into the whole is, I think like we've rehashed that for many years, unfortunately. But the fact is that Jewish law says you do anything within your power to save Jewish lives. And so when you talk about like, okay, not allowing an NGO, that's like a minor detail. When you talk about raising buildings, the fact is Israel is going to be part of the rebuilding. So even if they're taking down buildings now, because it's safer to bomb the building and bring it to its rubble than go in there and explode because of bombs inside of it. That's really what's going on, by the way. The tunnels is another problem. And they're still finding tunnels. That's the crazy. Yeah. So I say that our problem, we in this room hopefully all agree on one thing, but the question is, what do the media talk about? If you're finding that a media channel or personality has a bend in one direction, that's already a problem. You could like the person as an individual, but whatever they're saying is actually influencing people, and that's a problem. And so it's the same thing with everything. Israel is this conversation. The shooting in Minnesota is another conversation. Right? We can point to any event, and who you listen to is going to determine how you look at that event.
I recall, I almost think about it every day, 9/11. Don and I worked together. Our office was 8 miles from the Pentagon when the planes went into it. And in my office that morning, one of my college roommates who was working with the National Security Agency, and what we said to each other, we're involved in a war which will last hundreds of years. And Gaza is just a small part of it.
Right. I will share, just to end off on one simple Jewish verse on that. It does say that God promised the Jewish people that we will always be in name and in seed. He promised this to our patriarchs. And the idea is that why both words? In seed would mean the Jews are always Jews and always exist. But in seed means you could have assimilation and everything. And there's always going to be Jewish people who don't even know they're Jewish. In name means that we'll also always know that we're Jewish. And of course, there's a miraculous side to that. And there is a lot of efforts on each of our parts, parents, each individual, to make sure that we have the Jewish people. But the Jewish people doesn't mean only just the body, right? Because that's where we fight wars. But it also means with our heritage, with our culture, with our mitzvot and our identity. And so that there's that war that we have to fight as well. And that war doesn't happen only in Israel, it happens right here. And so if you want to talk about like, how do I help Israel? Besides for everything that can help in the sense of organizations that are helping Israel is making sure that our families, ourselves are focusing on being Jewish. And that's important. So I just share on that note. You had your hand up second. Let's go for your question.
During, I was thinking about the Hanukkah, then I thought about the Jewish menorah. How did and why is that a symbol of Judaism, the menorah?
Why is the menorah a symbol of Judaism? Yes.
7 branch.
Well, and that's really what the question's about. Anyone know an answer to this? I do have an answer. I'm just curious, just to throw it at the table. Why is the menorah like the symbol of Judaism? Any thoughts? You have a thought?
Maybe.
Yeah, let's hear.
7 branches, 7 days,
I thought of that.
Hey,
We don't know if that's
a
true.
week. Shabbat, being together.
Okay, it's a stretch over there.
I'm sorry.
I like it. There's a stretch over there. Okay, I'm going to share one answer, and you remind me of a text I read yesterday. So yesterday we had a question. We were talking about the foundation, like the legs of the menorah. The menorah was a 3-legged stand and in the temple. And so there's a rabbi that gives an explanation what the 3 legs represent. And he goes on to talking about all the details of the menorah and the temple. And so somebody asked the question after, he's like, wait, did God tell us that, or did this rabbi after the fact tell us that? And so I said that really, I don't know the answer to that specifically. I do, but I don't. What I shared is first let's understand what the menorah represents, and then you can understand why a rabbi is learning different things from each part of the menorah. And so the Torah doesn't say that the 3 legs are this, but here's what it says. The menorah was the symbol, and this comes back to the Hanukkah story. So this is where I learned this from. The menorah was the symbol in the temple that said God's presence rests amongst the Jewish people in the temple. And lighting the menorah each night in the temple represented that. And it was one of the reasons why the Greeks, who were fighting a war on the Jewish soul, not on the Jewish body, they were saying that who is this God that you trust and you do things, irrational things. And so one of the things that they specifically fought against was the menorah, because the menorah represented this idea that was beyond a rational idea. It was an irrational, supernatural type of representation that God's presence rests amongst the Jewish people. And so that's why they had the idea. So like, you know what, let's not light the menorah with that oil. Let's take away that special oil, because that's something that they hold dearly. So the menorah in general represents God's presence in the temple. It was not for light. There were many candelabras in the sanctuary of the temple and one menorah. Where do you learn that? There's a prayer that we recite on Hanukkah. And it says that when they came back to the temple, they lit the candles, plural, the candelabras, plural, of the temple. We weren't talking about the menorah. There was a lot of lights. They were shining. The menorah, the room where the menorah was, had a very interesting window. Think about the olden day style of building. You wanted more light inside, and you didn't have candles. You didn't have lights. You had candles. So during the daytime, you wanted as much light to come into your home. And so they would build the windows kind of like a concave-ish type of a window structure so that the light would shine more into the home. So narrower on the outside, wider on the inside. The menorah of the temple, the windows were reversed. The light shined out, right? It was this presence, this holiness, this aura that God's presence rests in the temple. Now, on that note, the menorah also has a number of things that we can learn from it. So yesterday when I was reading that text, the rabbi who wrote this text is one of the authors of the Code of Jewish Law. His name is Rabbi Moshe Isserles. And he wrote that the temple, the menorah's feet, the menorah's legs, 3 legs represent 3 truths, 3 fundamental principles that Jews believe in. Number 1, that God exists. Number 2, that God communicated with the world through the Torah what is right and wrong. And number 3, the third thing is that we, the Jewish people and human beings, have choice to do this, right? If we don't have free choice, then what's the difference if we know what's right and wrong? We're programmed. And so you have to also believe that we actually on our own make these decisions. So he says those are the 3 truths that the menorah represents. Now, on that note, there is just to come back to this, there is a author that says, it's actually this same rabbi, for that reason, King David on his shield had a menorah, not a Magen David, not a Star of David. There was actually a menorah on his shield because that's what he represented. This is what he fought for these truths, for the Jewish people. So the menorah does represent the Jewish people for many, I'm going to say there are many ways that we can connect that, but at its core, it's because the menorah's representation in the temple was that God's presence rests in the temple with the Jewish people. Question on that?
Why 7 branches?
Why 7 branches? There are a number of answers given to that. I'm going to Google it so I get you the right answers. The menorah of the Hanukkah menorah 8, 7 represents the natural order. That's what we talk about when we talk about in Jewish texts, because 7 is the days of the week. That's like natural. 8 is above nature. That's why the circumcision is also done on the 8th day, not on the 7th day. So I said the menorah that has 8 branches represents higher than nature, supernatural. 7 represents traditional nature. 8 represents above nature. So the circumcision is on the 8th day.
It's also the first day that a baby's blood clots on its own. It's on the 8th day.
Okay. Why do doctors in the hospital do circumcision on day 2?
Because they're not Jewish. And they inject
Do
the
they?
baby
With some clotting?
Otherwise, before that, if you just did it, the baby would bleed.
Why do you know that?
Because I worked in a hospital.
Before I Google it, there's the number 7 does have one other traditional Jewish thing, which is there are 7 sephirot. There are 7 ways when God communicates with the world, not in the sense of verbal, but the way that God gives blessings and light and spiritual. It is through what's called the sephirot. This is more Kabbalistic. The sephirot are not things that change God's messaging, but it's the way we perceive them. So if you had a stained glass window, for example, you have different colors. The light on the other side is still the same, but the way it's perceived on this side is whatever color the stained glass is. And so when God gives the blessings and guidance to this world, it's through these sephirot. Sephirot comes from the word to tell, to give over. There are 7, so it represents that. There are 3 beyond that are representative of intellect. These are the 7 emotions. So there are a number of reasons for 7. I am going to Google it so I can find some other answers for you. But while on that, you had a thing you wanted to add. So no?
No, I wanted to know why circumcision
Is on the 8th day. Okay.
So
I will share that. I think you also picked up on that. Okay, so Jewish teaching says that when you have a connection to an individual, friends, family, spouse, whatever it is. There are reasons why we make relationships. And the greatest relationship is when it's not based on reasons. And so I'm going to give you the example. If I fall in love with a woman who's beautiful, and I love her because she's beautiful, and I haven't really gotten to know her personality, the minute she's no longer beautiful, my love, in theory, should dissipate, and I shouldn't really have that same relationship. I'm getting there. I'm building it. Right? So relationships that are built on conditions can expire if those conditions expire.
Right.
So in general, there's a line that they say it's not enough to love your wife, you have to like her. Right? Because love is infatuation. There's a lot of things that it blinds. I mean, we can go on that. But the point is that a relationship that is based on conditions or that is conditional, when the conditions are no longer there, the relationship no longer exists. So they talk about in Jewish texts, what is an example of a relationship that was beyond conditions? One of the examples that they give is King David and his best friend. His best friend was King Saul's son. King Saul, if we know the story, tries to kill David. And their friendship exists even beyond that, which is weird. Like if somebody's trying to kill you, you wouldn't be friends with their son, right? Especially when the son still supports the father. I mean, the whole dynamic of this. And so why was that? Because they made a pact that their relationship would be beyond conditions. When we talk about God choosing the Jewish people, the Brit Milah is the covenant. It is the covenant. It is this relationship and connection. And so God says, my relationship with the Jewish people is beyond conditions. You can sin, you can make mistakes, you can show that you don't like me today or tomorrow, but our relationship is going to endure. And so one of the ways that we bring this out, 7 is the natural order, 8 represents beyond nature, and God therefore chose the 8th day to show that this relationship is supernatural, not through the natural order, which would be 7. And so that's one of the explanations to the Brit Milah being on the 8th day. Now, what happens if your bris is on the 30th day? Does that mean that kid God's going to sometimes like and maybe not like anymore? No, that's not what it means. You do it when you're healthy. In the end of the day, the baby has to be healthy. And so, like my son, the bris was way past the 30th day. And my other son was on time. Because in the end of the day, God still wants you to survive the bris. And so you do it when the baby is healthy. And so there are plenty of children that will have their bris on day 25 or whatever day it is, and that's the right day for them. But the idea of being on the 8th day is because 8 represents higher than nature, which represents a connection to God that is not based on something, which is the natural order idea. You have a question on that?
No, question. I just wanted to share a cute story. We went to Israel and we brought a good friend of ours who's Italian Catholic, who owns a wonderful Italian restaurant. And every Christmas, he would close the restaurant and have a private party. And every year he'd say to me, bring a menorah so that I can light it next to the Christmas tree, etc. And I kept saying, it doesn't make sense, it lasts half an hour.
Right.
So we had a plastic disc with a light behind it with a picture of menorah on it. And I'd bring that, and it's cheap, whatever. And every year he'd say to me, that's disgusting, it's a cheap thing, whatever. So when he went to Israel with us, he said, I'm getting a menorah. So he went to all the top stores, because that's how we shop in Israel, and walked in and said, I'm looking for a menorah for Christmas. And I said to him, I guarantee you, you're the only person in Eretz Israel who ever walked into a store saying, I need a menorah for Christmas.
Christmas.
Okay, here we go. On a final thought for the menorah, why 7? So he writes, based on a verse in Zechariah, so Zechariah, which compares the Jewish people to a golden candelabra, Rabbi Schneur Zalman of Liadi explains that each of the 7 lamps of the candelabra corresponds to one of the 7 holy character traits that we just talked about, the 7 sephirot: kindness, gevura, compassion, just going through that, austerity, compassion. And then he points out that one of the conclusions that we must draw from this are that there are really several different paths in Judaism. There are 7 different ways. We are not all the same, and we are not all meant to be the same. Just as there are 7 basic character traits, so too there are 7 legitimate and valid ways to be a candelabra, a luminary. You don't have to be a carbon copy of somebody else to be a good Jew. The critical issue is, are you kindled? Are you lit up? If you are lit up and you are illuminating the surroundings as a candelabra of Judaism, then your way is valid. The Torah teaches us this by the fact that the candelabra does not have 1 branch, but 7, so that everyone can be themselves and serve God according to their own personality and way, provided that they are illuminating the world in the way God wants. And then it talks about how the menorah shined out, like what I shared about the windows. So
What-
now you know I don't make up my stuff. Here I Googled it and came up.
Why is it people have always a discussion on Hanukkah? I know you light the menorah from right to left, and some people says no. The first light, the first candle, you do it. Then the second one, you go to the left. So why is it?
Okay, so not to rehash Hanukkah because we have a whole another year.
Yeah.
The short answer is that there was a debate how to light the menorah. The answer was that we add a candle each night. In general, Judaism favors the right side, that is love. When we talk about these sephirot, right represents love. Left represents fear. What should be the guiding trait in our service of God, love or fear? Love sounds better.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have some sort of a fear involved, not necessarily fear of sin, but more of like an awe. Like how amazing it is that this infinite God who has given us all these mitzvot still cares about me, the individual. That causes an awe, not fear the way we think of fear, that I'm afraid to touch something because it's going to burn me, but rather an awesomeness. And so love is one of the ways. So let's say we start on the right. But then the question is, what should I, now we go into practical things. So now we know we're starting on the right side of the menorah. Now we touch the next practical question. Where should I put the next candle? Would be to the left of it. But which one should I light first? Because we're making a blessing, you want the blessing on the newest candle. That's already going into technical stuff on Jewish law. So for example, Jewish law on blessings has a lot of details, but the newest thing is always the more exciting thing. And so that typically will get the blessing first. When you talk about foods, for example, not to go into the Hanukkah menorah, by the way, and just to finish that thought, that's why you go now left to right from the right side. Full stop. When we talk about foods, for example, the more important food at your table should be the one that you make the blessing on. So if you have 3 items on your table, let's say water, meat, and well, I don't want to, I'm talking about where they have the same blessing. Bread is always the most important, will be first. I'm saying, let's say 3 things have the same blessing. No, because carrots would be hadama. So I'm trying to think what's another, like, let's say an egg. Deal? You have water, an egg, and meat. And they all get the same blessing, so I only have to do it once. Which one should I make the blessing on? The most important, it's a shehakol. That's the Hebrew. But of those 3 items, I'm going to do it only on one of them because all of them are included in that. I should do it on the most important item at the table. It's part of how we praise God. You're making a blessing. Well, no, I'm saying without bread. If you just had 3, right, you might not have bread at a meal. So the idea is to honor God even through that, and you do it on the most. Wine, for example. I'm going to use another example. You make kiddush at your Shabbat table, and you have 2 different bottles of wine. Which bottle should you use for the kiddush? Well, you're sanctifying God through this blessing. It should be the better wine. But let's say yeah. Well, it should be the kosher wine. Let's go there, okay? But let's say you have good kosher, yeah. Then go for the better wine because you're honoring God through this blessing. So I'll share something interesting. Like I have a friend growing up when we were in yeshiva whose family was very into wines. And so the thing is, like our tradition when I make kiddush is you fill up the cup and you're drinking it. You're not sipping it and enjoying the wine as much, right? It's a different type of drinking when you do the kiddush. And then later, maybe when you're swishing it in your wine glass. And so they always had this struggle. The kiddush should have the best wine. But when you drink the wine for the kiddush, you're not like enjoying it the same way that you would enjoy wine during a meal. And so they always had a struggle. I don't know what they did in the end. I just know that they had the question. Really, they should put the most expensive wine there. I think what they did was they didn't bring it out to the table, because if it's on the table, you got to use it.
Use it.
If you're doing it with all the meaning and intent.
I can
So
change the subject very quickly.
sure, go for it.
I have a thing with nachas. I went to a lecture by a psychologist many years ago who said that children are important brought to on this earth to give you nachas. And so lately, when I hear it at a wedding or something, someone they should give me nachas, like I cringe, because I'm so embedded with this whole idea that children are not supposed to give you nachas. I mean, they can, but I mean, they're not put on this earth to give you nachas. So.
Okay, I like this question. Did everyone catch this question?
Yeah.
So we all have children, or if we know people with children, the question comes up is like, you want to have a lot of nachas, which means pride from your children. And so Madeline said, who told this to you? A rabbi.
A yeshiva had educational dinner,
Okay, so a lecture or a speech was that your children are not here on this earth to give you nachas, to give you pride. They have a much greater purpose than that. How about that? I'm going to rephrase it.
You're lucky, that's,
Right.
So what's your take? What's the Jewish take on that?
And it's a nuanced question. Like, how do we look at our children? Are they here to make me proud? Or are they here to be good people? And by default, I will be proud of them.
Because they're good people.
Because they're doing the right thing and they're being a mensch.
Are you going to love the child that doesn't give you nachas more than?
Okay, now you have the next question. That's another question. No, not necessarily.
Well, it's not.
No, because actually what you just shared, I think is proving the point, right? What Madeline just added was, let's say your child doesn't give you nachas. Are you still going to love them? And the answer should be yes. Unconditional. So it has nothing to do with nachas.
You're going to love the child who doesn't give you nachas.
Of course you will.
Then you have the three questions, the child who doesn't know how to,
What?
right, when you think of Passover, which will be coming up, right? The child,
Right.
There's three
There's
questions.
four
Four
sons.
So those aren't necessarily.
Right. I think you answered your own, at least to me, like adding that extra point answered the question. It's like, my love of my child is not because they're giving me nachas. And sometimes you do everything right and your child still ends up doing the wrong thing. I was reading the news. Missouri had that arson at the oldest synagogue. Did you read that in the news? Mississippi? Thank you. So in Mississippi, you have this arsonist. He texts his father in the middle of the night that he's going to be burning or making a fire and taking care of this problem. And his father is the one who turns him in, right? Now you can ask, did his father turn him in because he doesn't like him? Or does his father turn him in because he loves him?
Because he loves.
Right? He's like, I don't want you to do that. I want you to save yourself from yourself. Now his son, who clearly doesn't have his mind is not working properly. I would say that there's a disconnect. His son could look at that act and say, you hate me. You should have protected me. You shouldn't have told anyone. But really, that was an act of love. And so when we talk about in Jewish discipline, we talk about sometimes loving your child comes through love, and sometimes loving your child comes through fear. I'm using the gevura, the discipline line of the way we express ourselves, right? When a child is disciplined by their parent, that's out of love. You want them to become better and learn from it, rather than keep going down that path. So your discipline is actually love. I watched this video clip and I don't remember it, but like, as you were talking about, I was like, this would be a good clip to kind of point to. He talks about fear and discipline, and he kind of shares that like, discipline is not fear. Discipline does not have to be that you make your child fear you. Discipline is about sharing with your child what you did is incorrect and I want to help you. This is the right thing to do. So I think you kind of answered your question. The man was trying to share is like, regardless of whether your child gives you nachas or not, first of all, that's not the purpose that they came onto this world for. It wasn't to give the parent nachas. We as parents have a great responsibility to raise our children into productive members of society, give them their morals, their values, their ideals, which includes sometimes telling them they did the wrong thing. But regardless if they get that, because we tried our best and they are their own human beings, they're their own people, we're still going to love them. Hopefully. Hopefully this isn't you, but parents who are visiting their children in prisons, they know they did the wrong thing and they still you need the love to help lift them out of these situations. And so if you gave up on them after they've done the wrong thing, like they need that more than ever. Just like they need spirituality more than ever, and whatever else we do to rehabilitate someone from a terrible situation that they put themselves into. I'm not saying that they found themselves in, that they put themselves in.
But sometimes you hear, let's say, not the parents, when they give a speech, let's say at bar mitzvah, you hear a rabbi saying later, you just should only give you nachas, or somebody, or an uncle might.
Right, so in your mindset, you have to add by default.
So it's
right, being a good Jew or being a good individual, whatever words they use, which by default give their parents nachas.
It keeps you.
Well, no, maybe they're giving a blessing because we can't take nachas for granted.
Right, but by the way, there's a motivation, right? Sometimes people need a motivation. An altruistic person, great. But sometimes people need a motivation. It's like, you're hurting me. Please be better in class. I beg my child every morning. You're hurting me when you're not, right? But really, that's not why I want him to be good, not for me. The idea is that he should be a good individual who is a leader, who's productive, who will take all those skill sets and then put them to work. I don't mean in a job, but in life. You want to add to that? Or a new question, no problem.
No. I agree with what you're saying. But part of it is a selfish thing. That look how good my child is because I taught my child all these values and morals. And
there is definitely a truth to that. To add, to kind of bring a Jewish little anecdote to that. A person passes away, and so it says that we in our lifetime, we have a body and a soul. We can affect the betterness for ourselves, which helps our soul throughout our lifetime. It lifts the soul up. And therefore, what we talk about in Judaism is that the journey of the soul, you come on this earth, the soul was stagnant. Through the actions that we do through our lifetime, we actually elevate the soul, that when it returns to God, it's even greater. A person passes away, they can no longer do that for themselves because they don't have the body to do the mitzvot. God gave us this opportunity here. So it says the children now do it for their parent. What do they do throughout that, let's say the first year? They do a mitzvah in merit of their parent. They give charity in merit of their parent. They study in merit of their parent. And these things help the soul of their parent. Now, if I wanted to do something positive for somebody who's not my parent, so I have to say I am doing this, or have in mind, I'm doing this in merit of the soul of so-and-so. It says a child doesn't have to make any mention. A child by default, when they do a mitzvah, their parents benefit. Why? Like you just said, because we taught them. So because we taught them, every action that they do, I reap the benefit. But to say that the child's purpose here is to give me nachas, which is like an ownership type of a thing, doesn't necessarily jive. That's the idea. It's like, no, they're not here to give you nachas. They will give you nachas because you've raised them well. You might have raised them well again and they don't give you nachas, but right. If we're in that situation, which we pray for each of us, that our child should give us nachas. What we're really saying, though, is that our child should be a good, functioning person in society who is productive, who gives and makes the world better and makes their family better and surroundings. Yes?
The male of the highest character, we say he's a mensch. What is the corresponding expression for a woman?
It's funny, and because I like this question. We don't speak a perfect Yiddish here, right? So we use Yiddish words. No, I think we still say the word she's a mensch. But the truth, like you said, is mensch means man. We don't say a menschus, or a mensch. I think in our society we say she is a mensch because we use it a little bit differently. It's now part of our, but which is the same. It's still using the masculine term. But I will share to add to that though. English is very different than all Latin-based languages and Hebrew as well. That masculine doesn't necessarily only go on a masculine on a person, right? We use certain terms or terminologies that have gender within it to say things. So sometimes we talk about things in a feminine perspective. The soul we talk about as in a feminine perspective all the time. It's in Hebrew, it's feminine. So I think that in that regard, like it's not as weird or different because in Yiddish they are using masculine and feminine for certain things. English doesn't have that.
They're starting, it's like, they don't say actress, an actor anymore, they say actor.
Yeah, but it's funny. I know why. Flight attendant rather than the stewardess. I think that's more. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it's. I wouldn't say it's woke because we've been doing that a long time. But I will tell you something interesting. Like I just did the invocation for the new chairwoman for the Maricopa. Not new. She is now the chairwoman for the year of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. Every year, someone else holds the gavel, and I wasn't sure. Do I say chairwoman or the chair? Right. So I said the chair, but I noticed that on the actual podium they were saying chairwoman, Madam Chairwoman. I just out of safety to not say the wrong thing, I said the new chair. So like because of that, I paid attention how they were using, but it was after I spoke. So
I want to say about that Nachas thing about that. I think people
does it sit well with you on?
Yeah, because I think it's being used different. It's not being used as what it was intended to be used. It's being used as a like
Yeah,
you know,
Stan, that's what it is.
I say
Pride in your family. Nachas is pride in your family. Or from. I could have nachas from you.
Or yichus.
Not yichus. It's with an N. Nachas. Yichus is lineage.
No.
So yichus is lineage. Nachas is pride from your children. You could have nachas from your parents, but it's to have that pride of some in Spanish. Do you speak Spanish a little bit? Orgullo, which means pride, or orgullo, depending on your dialect. Pleasure.
Pleasant. Yeah.
Yes, so that you give God pleasure is the nachas. In Hebrew, it's used a lot in the Torah. To give you an example, when we do the incense in the temple, it says, "You have given me pride. You have given me pleasantness, pleasure." But the way we're using it here is like you're getting pride or pleasure from your children. But I just don't want it to be taken the wrong way.
I look at nachas as like if you look at somebody's hutch in their dining room, and one person has 8 silver kiddush cups and one has 2. I think it becomes almost like a status thing.
But
So
that's
like,
no longer nachas.
no, I know, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the word is being, I think in a lot of places it's being used incorrectly. If, or like to say, a lot of Jews say, well, this is my.
We aren't fixing it here, that's for sure.
No, this is my son. They don't have names. This is the doctor, the lawyer, and the accountant. They don't have names.
Right.
And that's a Jewish thing too. You know what I mean?
They're giving you nachas.
So I think nachas became like a status thing. Like, your kids are great. My kids are not. Your kids are great. I have 2 kids that are great and one that's not.
No,
great.
hold on. They're
That's-
both that's I think a little different. Now you went into something else. Both of those families are getting nachas from their children. The question is, what standard did they put for their children? If I expected my children to be doctors and they went into finance and they're not millionaires, so I'm going to say I don't have the nachas that I wanted because I expected them to go to certain schoolings and certain professions.
And you want him to study for 10 years and he didn't want to do that. Would you then say to yourself that child did not give me nachas?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's a subjective question.
In your head, would you not only denounce everybody?
Listen, studying is not for everyone. So you, as a child, you expected your child to be very studious, and then you learn this individual is actually not a classroom learner. And so you have to adjust. That's what I just said. It's subjective. You have to know that your child, the way to properly educate children is individually, meaning you don't set a standard. This is what we do. This child has to have a different standard than that child, or we're not teaching the children according to their way, which is, by the way, a Hebrew teaching about education. Chinuch lenar al pi darko. Right? If I say that each child has to be equal, I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
So like,
You're also
yeah.
a also relating the nachas to occupation and income, which it shouldn't. Right?
That's what we're, that's
Yeah.
exactly what-
Right, simply the character. I mean, you can be a physician, a trash man, both a very noble character.
And I will share, there was a study that was done that, on that note, that people in different professions, this is not about the parent anymore, but you can have a janitor or the person who cleans up in the hospital who feels like they are saving lives because every time they clean the room, they have now protected the next patient, and they're not the doctor, and they're not making the same amount of money. And they feel very fulfilled. So even if we start talking about fulfillment, it has nothing to do with what line of work you're in. It's all about the perspective. And if a child or an adult, this is really where you would go to Maryland. It's like someone who feels like they're less than because their own expectation was wrong. They thought that the only way to be productive in society was if they became a doctor, and their entire life they're not a doctor. And whose fault is that? Usually the parents or society that kind of said, this is how you're successful. If you don't hit that line, you're not successful. And therefore, they have a beautiful family. They're paying their bills. They're doing everything right. And they still feel like they're not complete. It's because somewhere along the way, they got an incorrect teaching or life lesson that said, this means success. Well, we got to readjust them. And it's the same thing in nachas. Like, what is nachas? If the expectation was a specific type of work, and then we have to readjust a couple people. The parent who impressed that, society that impressed that, and then we have to change the child because they'll be depressed.
I wanna ask you something.
And then I'll take you.
When,
Last two questions here. Let's do it.
when you light the Yuletide candles, do you say a blessing?
Okay, good question. When you light a yahrzeit candle, do you say a blessing? The answer is no. The yahrzeit candle is a custom. The original yahrzeit candle that we find in Jewish tradition was actually lit on Yom Kippur or right before Yom Kippur exclusively. And it has translated into being lit also throughout the year on the day or the evening before the passing. So there's no blessing. It is connected to the idea that we're adding, well, there's two parts. The Yom Kippur one has one reason. Throughout the year, we do it because it says that the candle is representative of the soul. The soul has that yearning for God. It is based on a verse in Proverbs that says the flame of man is the candle of God. No, sorry, the soul of man is the candle of God. And the idea that we talk about is the soul is an expression of like a candle. It's always leaping. It's always trying to jump off the wick, but the wick and the fuel keeps it down. The soul wants to be spiritually connected to God, and we keep the soul kind of tied down to this world. And as a way of remembering our loved one, we light a candle, which gives them great joy that we remember them. But the bigger point is not the candle, it's to do a mitzvah afterwards in their merit. The candle doesn't do anything.
So say a prayer?
No.
Say Yizka?
No.
No.
On a yahrzeit? No. But you could do your own prayers that,
Could
but
just say 12, I could say like, oh, I remember.
of course, that has not, yeah, you can always talk to the soul. That is a Jewish belief. You won't get an answer the way you expected, but
Yeah.
but 100%, we say that you are more connected to your loved one after passing because they are no longer restricted to time and place like a body does to a person. But the biggest gift to a loved one who has passed is a mitzvah, right? They love knowing that we think about them, which the candle does, but a mitzvah. Kaddish is not a mitzvah. Kaddish is praying to God and praising God because one less person is on this earth praising God. So we kind of fill that void. But the greatest gift to a loved one are the mitzvot that we do. And again, that's a spectrum, right? There's no one right or wrong. And so each of us do the ones that we find meaningful, or maybe we know what that loved one found meaningful and you say, I want to support that charitable thing, right? That would be a normal way to do that. But there isn't a specific.
Why do we praise there's one less person?
We're not praising, we're filling in the praise for that person. Yeah. You had a question, and then we'll end with that.
It's just bouncing back to wine for a minute. Why is it I see that most people, well, at least in Chabad, that they will only make Kiddush on red wine and not white?
Okay, great question. And it's not a law. So just to go back to that. So question was, why is it that there are people who favor red wine? I'm not only because not only Chabad, that's why I'm making it more general. That favor red wine over a white wine for Kiddush. The answer is that there are two parts to this. If you have a white wine that is actually better than the red wine, you should use the white wine. In general, white wines are not looked at the same way as red wines in the sense of quality. Like a red wine is more prestigious. And again, we're honoring God through the Kiddush, so the red wine is what you would choose. But if you truly had two bottles on your table, one is white and one is red, you technically should use the white. Now, there are more answers to this. Like there are some Kabbalistic parts on this where red might still be the preference. And so again, we come back to this blessing thing. If the white wine is actually a better wine, don't put it on the table during that Kiddush. So you go and grab that. But the answer is red is considered a more of better quality.
Also,
No, just
what's better?
yeah. So then do white. Okay, so you come back to that. Like people who don't drink alcohol do grape juice. That's totally yeah. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
She has a question.
Now, it's a white sweet wine for kids.
No, it doesn't say that anywhere.
How do
If you grew up in this world of people, kosher wines only coming more to the scene of more recent years, people grew up with like, oh no, Manischewitz has to be the wine for Kiddush. But Manischewitz is not a good wine. Unless they start like, making quality wines. So until then, like that shouldn't, it's like tradition. You have to do that for the Seder. It's like, no, you don't. They did that because that was the only kosher wines in those days. So
How do you determine which is a better wine? You keep saying better. So,
you have to know.
I mean, it's about price, talking about what's
No, it has
fine.
nothing to do with price. Sometimes you have very expensive bottles that are not as good as.
Yes, how do you know which one's the
Right.
better? That would come to the truth.
Trade wine, trade.
All right, this will be the final, real final question. What makes a wine not kosher? I'm
Not
going to use it like that.
The people who are the vintners are not Shomer Shabbos.
No,
They're not.
Well, why? What are you going to say, Tzippi?
I'm gonna say the kosher wine, the kosher wine is made by the years. Like after 7 years, 1 year you don't do
Oh,
anything.
okay. No, that's Shemitah. That's going to be another category. All right. The short answer to the question is that wine plays a role in service of God in all religions, right? Meaning not just Judaism. Wine was part of the service of God. And so because of that, Jewish law said you cannot benefit from anything that has to do with idolatry. Let's not talk about wine yet. You cannot benefit from idolatry. If a non-Jewish person had made wine and had intent to use it for their God, you can't have any benefit from it. And so for that reason, on a most basic standard answer, you had to be very careful with who was making wine if they were pagan, because maybe they had intent that it was for their God. So I do know that today, or do we really have this problem? We probably don't, but that is where the law comes from. And so because of that, coming back to what Ethel was saying, when wine is being made, you wanted only Jewish people involved in the wine process from the moment it was pressed until it goes into the bottle. Once it's in the bottle, anyone can be involved with that. But once it comes out of the bottle again, you start those questions again. And so we're all Jews.
They're all
Now, the other way to fix this is to pasteurize the wine, which if you are a wine aficionado, I am not. But if you are, you're going to have a problem with that because that means it no longer can really become more rich. You've ended the process the minute you pasteurized it. But a lot of kosher wines, you'll notice, say mevushal, cooked, because that allows non-Jewish people to be involved in it because we're no longer worried about being used for any pagan reasons. So your real question, like now that you have this information, okay, then why today in the 21st century are we worried about that when paganism is really not involved with libations and that? I'm going to say that there's a line that I've read many times, and it's a good line to know when we ask questions about Jewish traditions and we don't know the reason, or we're given a reason. It says the line is, and I should find out the source for it because I just read it, so I can go back to that. That says there is more than one reason given for laws. And so even when we try to understand a law, we give a reason, and therefore when I just gave a reason, technically means that we shouldn't worry about this anymore. There are other reasons that we don't know. And so I can't answer why today we shouldn't worry about it anymore, because there might be more additional layers to that,
Why don't the grape pickers have to be Jewish?
because you're not making wine yet.
Well, they're picking what's being made.
But the grapes is a very good question. The grapes itself were not used for the service. The wine was used for the service. It's only once you press it and you get liquid out of it. It's the short answer. I'm going to end on this note. You can unpack that one, but grapes are not wine. No one ever, it's a different blessing than wine, right? It doesn't become wine until you've pressed it.
Why is it a lot of people say if the boy is not married, he shouldn't put a tallit on the tent?
Okay.
Some of them say,
I'll repeat it. Why is it that, and by the way, the answer is tradition. Why is it that married men in some communities begin to wear a tallis and in other communities from 13 and on? That's the short question to it. I'm going to say the answer has to do with tradition. I will share, though, that in many communities, like where you kind of take on both, you say, listen, when you go up to the Torah, put on a tallis. Why? Because you want them to wear tzitzit. And so they don't wear tzitzit on their undershirt, so therefore they have. That's
Single, and in the Orthodox shul that I grew up in, because he was unmarried, they didn't want him to wear a tallis, so that if there were single women there, they knew, that everybody knew.
So it was to help him find a shidduch. I like that.
yeah.
That's good. We'll end on that note. Don't wear the tallis, so people on the other side know you're single. I will